We are custom live streaming. We're live now, Chair.
Thank you, Pauline. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone attending the meeting, my last meeting of Audit, I may say. My name is Councillor Terry Paul. I'm the Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm tonight's Chair. The meeting's been live streamed on YouTube, so welcome everybody online. Concerning meeting etiquette, please may I ask you indicate your wish to speak by raising your physical hand. People online should raise their virtual hand and we'll monitor the screen with virtual hands. Please ensure all questions, including follow-up and supplementary questions, and any answers are addressed to myself as the Chair. Anyone that can remotely must turn on their camera when speaking. Please note the chat function on Zoom will not be used for questions and answers on the agenda, but you may need to communicate with the clerk. In addition, if there's an issue with the sound in the meeting room, please do let me know. May I remind members and officers to speak up clearly in the chamber so that the clerk and public can hear you. And welcome to Ashwin Shaw, as your first meeting, and welcome to the meeting. Congratulations to you. Obviously, we're going to start at 7:30 tonight, slightly later, due to the season of Ramadan, to accommodate members, officers, and the watching public. When addressing the committee for the first time tonight, please introduce yourself for the benefit of the watching public so we can identify everyone. Thank you, everyone. Let's turn to the items on the agenda. As the agenda, I'm going to make two changes. I'm going to swap item 5 with item 10. Does that agree, members, committee? Agree?
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you very much. Item number 1, any apologies for absence or substitutes. I have received apologies from the independent chair, Daniel Mark Carr. Are there any other apologies for absence?
I've not been advised of any apologies. Councillor Eric Chowdhury said he would join online.
Thank you, Pauline. Item number 2, are there any declarations of interest to those members who are present physically? Are there any disclosable declarations of interest? Okay. Item number 3, minutes of the last meeting. Members are requested to consider and agree the accuracy of the decision of the minutes of the last meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee held on 20th of February. The clerk has advised me that on minute 7.7, I'll give you a minute to find that, the additional recommendation should technically have read to delegate final minor amendments in the accounts to the Section 151 officer in consultation with the chair and not to the chair in consultation with the Section 151 officer. Might be a fraudulent slip. Is that all minor order of words agreed? 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 No. Everyone found that? Lovely. Are there any other matters of accuracy? I take that from the minutes are agreed. Is that agreed? Very much. Item number 4, action log. The committee asked to note the contents of the action log and the items dated today for closure. You will see yesterday and in the evening an updated response to action AC 292. Are there any questions on the action log? I have one, but are there any members of any questions at all? No, I take that as consent. I just got. Right, there was an action AC 279 and it was raised on the 5th of November last year. The item concerned housing voids. Just to refresh our memories, the committee was not well pleased that the current turnaround plan was 55 or 56 days, or we asked for a plan of action to come to this committee. There's been no plan which has come to the committee. I think there was some discussion that we might have asked just for clarity, but that plan is also circulated to the Housing Scrutiny Committee. That committee was on the 27th of January, so there would have been ample time for that action to be completed. I have, via the clerk, written to the director, Paul Kitson, hope you're watching, to expect the report to be sent to the committee by return, and I hope to send to the committee that action plan within the next 5 working days. I've also copied the section from Head 1 into that request for the report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. To members present in the room, show of hands. Yeah, we agreed. Lovely. Go on to the actual agenda now. Item number 10. Can I welcome officers and can I also welcome Ashwin Shaw, the new Gilling Authority for the first meeting. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
Introduce yourself and your title for the public.
Yes, my name is Ashwin Shaw. I'm the Corporate Risk Manager here at New. Good evening. This paper presents the Council's refreshed risk management strategy and policy for 2026-2027, and the update essentially strengthened the Council's strategic risk framework by aligning it with recognised best practice, including ISO 31000 and the HM Treasury's Orange Book. A key change is the introduction of the bow tie for our strategic risks, which will improve clarity around risk drivers, existing controls, and mitigation activity, helping senior leadership and members better understand how nuanced risks are being managed. Strategic risks will continue to be overseen by the CLB, the Corporate Leadership Board, with regular reporting to this committee to support governance and assurance. I'm happy to take any questions.
I've got one question. Many members who are listening are not as technically qualified as you, right? So when you say that the bow tie model it strengthens, can you explain to the layperson what does the bow tie model do? What is its advantages? And what assurance will it provide to the residents of Newark?
Sure. So essentially, the bow tie is a visual summary of a specific strategic risk that we're trying to present. It helps members understand the risk, the current controls, mitigation actions, and the impacts. Just at a glance, it's quite intuitive, whereas our current risk entries are quite text heavy and they can be quite difficult for individuals to understand what they're discussing without actually reading a long wall of text. A lot of the time, these narratives will mix things like the risk event to impacts, to statutory duties, to ownership of the risk. So to separate it out and have it as a visual summary is definitely going to make oversight a lot easier and to be able to scrutinise how the risks are being managed.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Joanne's got a hand up.
Joanne.
Yes. Can you just assure me? I mean, how has management ensured that this new risk management strategy and policy is integrated into the existing governance processes?
Thank you. So for the moment, it's not.
Introduce yourself.
Maria Christophe, Interim Assistant Chief Executive of Change and Improvement and Corporate Director of Resources and Section 151 Officer. So it's not yet been incorporated. This is the proposal to incorporate. So this, from my perspective, enables us to track risk in a consistent way across the organisation. I think the not only the bow tie model in terms of page 9 of the appendix, but also the scoring mechanism that's included in the pack that makes it clear, depending on how you're evaluating the risk, and that's on page 8 of the pack, should enable us to be much more consistent about how we score all risks across the organisation, but in particular the strategic risks. Only those that are the strategic ones should be elevated to the strategic risk register. So we're looking for comment, noting from the committee here, before it goes on to Cabinet for approval, and then it will formulate how we operate, it will be rolled out, training, and the idea is that once we roll it out, we then have to embed it in where we operate.
Are you happy with the answer, Joanne?
Yes, thank you. Very comprehensive.
Thank you. I'll bring in Councillor Rick Chowdhury.
This doesn't really look much like a strategy to me because it doesn't really say like what the objectives are or what we're trying to solve. That hasn't been done before. Can you talk us through what's going to be different as a result of this strategy that we failed to do previously? Like what problems does it solve? Switching to this.
What are the outcomes?
So what I've basically done is leveraged our existing policy from 2022 to 24 and tightened up the language to align it closer to best practice or recognise best practice. So risk management best practice ISO 31000 or the HM Treasury's Orange Book. So it's looking at the language, the terminology, the methodology, the process, and ensuring that it aligns with best practice.
But is there any effort around getting adoption? Because the problem with risk registers and risk management policies is always around adoption. Are people invested in it? Do people act upon it? Does it mean anything when it comes to a board meeting? Is there any work being done around making sure the adoption of risk practices is being improved?
Yes, so that will, sorry, John, is
No.
Sure.
You can take it and I'll ask.
Sure. So I believe we have to start with the foundations, the building blocks, and what guides and kind of the constraints that we work within and operate within. So having a clear policy and strategy as foundational step before building the rest of the framework is in my opinion, the way to go.
And just to add, it's the framework that we expect everyone to be operating in. So if people have got any doubt about what sort of matrix we use, we're using a 4x4. It's very clearly explained. The purpose and then the organisational benefits of effective risk management are in the first couple of pages. And we'll be rolling out risk management training, risk management awareness in the organisation, because the best risk management is to mitigate against the risk long before it happens. But if aspects of the organisation in terms of operations aren't aware of risks, then they'll turn into issues that need to be addressed straight away and could have implications.
Is that Arik? Councillor Charlie? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Moore?
Just from the risk register, would you say there are any particular directorates at greatest risk, and what have you been able to kind of, I know you've kind of using the bow tie method now, but given previous registers, can you say on a sustained period of time if there's any directorates that have shown kind of sustained high, I guess, high risk appetite? That's the way I would word it.
That's a different question. We need to assess where we believe our risk appetite to be, and some of that depends on how much risk we can take on at any one time. I think the assessment of risk across the organisation will be happening. Has already started to happen, so that we can get that visibility. One risk management system, one way of reporting, and then also through, I think we were saying, risk champions and working with risk leads in the organisation to ensure that there is a consistency in how we challenge, raise risks onto the risk register, deal with them in terms of control actions, and actually implementing them to take the inherent risk down into the residual risk, but actually bring it to such a low residual risk that it's not a risk that we carry anymore. So we need to get people into that way of thinking. Some parts of the organisation are really good at this. They will naturally be good at this because they're dealing with such high risk services, and they have to be good at it. And there'll be other parts of the organisation that they'll need to be trained in how we're operating.
Okay. Councillor McCord?
Thank you. My question is going to be two parts. We talked about risk appetite, and for our residents, I think they would need to understand what risk appetite is. So what do we mean when we talk about risk appetite? My colleague mentioned it.
Sure. So the definition is the amount of risk that an organisation is willing to take in pursuit of strategic objectives.
At any one time.
Yes, and I know, and we talked about risk appetite a lot in our in this policy documents, and some organizations is good at talking about risk appetite. So how do we ensure that appetite is actively informing our decision making and prioritization across different directorates? Because we talk about teams, departments, directorates, etc. How do we ensure that is effective across?
There's a couple of things that are important when it comes to assessing at one's risk appetite in an organisation and at any one time, and it's our ability to service that risk should it all come to fruition at any point in time. So organisations will not take on more at different times because they're already managing quite a number of risks. If you think about the amount of risk that we were managing during the pandemic, we wouldn't have started big initiatives during that time because we were managing quite a lot of risk in that time. So it's our ability to manage risk at any one time. And I think the more mature the risk culture is in the organisation, the risk management culture, and the more it's embedded, enables us to be confident that risks are being identified as early as possible and being mitigated.
Okay, so basically what you given me, no disrespect, is a textbook answer, but how are we doing it in practice?
Well, that's what we're investing at the moment, and this framework will give us the ability to do that, where everyone needs to be following this framework.
So therefore, what you're saying is something that is futuristic rather than something that we do in practice.
So we're doing in practice at the
You
moment,
mentioned-
but with a really
You
old.
mentioned the pandemic, so
No, it's a good question. So we're doing it in practice at the moment. We've already got a risk management strategy and policy that exists, but from 2022 to 24. So it's due to be updated. We're in 2026 now. We're talking about 2026, 27's financial year. So it needs to be updated. We have a framework in place. This gives us the opportunity to launch the new framework and ensure that it's introduced and embedded, and then we can assess how the organisation is performing against that.
So a question in the same vein, but slightly different angle. Miriam, in your section 25 statement last month, there were 3 charts at the back, which were our debt to revenue.
Yes.
Okay. So looking at your section 25, and I've got those 4 darts, but in particular, I'm looking at them now. The organisation took on quite a lot of debt. Well, perhaps our risk appetite was too big for our eyes. How can you ensure that Ashley mentioned risk champions and work to embed the model into the organisation? But from a resident looking at our debt profile is up there, and really we should be down there. What assurance can you provide that people are going to take this and live by it and operate by it, and doesn't see it as we tick the box with what we can do, what we want to do? Now, I'll let your report, Ashley, so I'll let you answer first, then Maria will come, but it's your report.
Sure. So there'll be monitoring going on with regard to each directorate at that level, but also the service area level and the program project level. I'm starting to create an inventory which logs things like when things were last updated, and it can turn red if it is due an update. So there's a lot more monitoring going on, and it's going to be monitored at different levels, not just the strategic level. I think historically you have had a problem with lower visibility of the project program level risk registers and perhaps some service area registers. So by having a central group risk function, that gives us the ability to actually monitor and kind of police it a little bit more.
Okay, question to section 151. Will the senior managers have this part of their performance agreement? Will I be measured every year on the risk I've taken on? Is it within the corporate policy? Am I adhering to policies? Because what gets measured, what gets done.
I'm going to answer your first question and then come back to that. So the point of risk management is that if we're not assessing risk before it happens, then you're going to be dealing with it in the company anyway.
Sure.
So the more issues we're dealing with in the organisation, we know that if we didn't have sight of things, and there will always be things that come out of left field that no one knew about, but the minute we have an inkling something could be a potential risk, we should be logging it, we should be doing something about it and mitigating against it, so it does not emerge and materialise and become an issue. However small or big it is. The word risk appetite is often used to determine, Ashwin gave us exactly what it means, but sometimes you'll hear it in organisations used about whether we should be doing more of something, or, our risk appetite is that we can take on lots of things. I don't see it through that lens. I see it through exactly the lens that Ashwin said. We need to absolutely be looking at the amount of risk that we're taking on board. You'll note in my section 25 statement, in the covering report to the budget report, and in the medium-term financial narrative document, there's a whole list of risks that I know to be known to us. There are a whole lot of risks that will be unknown to us that will emerge, and the minute we know about them, we should absolutely be logging them and doing something about them. How people are assessed within their performance management. The performance management framework that we have now are check-ins. I wish I had Gordon here to explain how it all works. But as managers, there are a number of things that we're expected to adhere to. Risk management is one of them. People management is another. Financial management is another, and budgetary control. Ensuring that the internal control environment is robust and we're implementing. So that I could go on. There's a list of about 15 to 20 items that we're expected to do. Health and safety, cybersecurity, information governance. And there are some things that are not just for managers, they're for everybody to do. So risk management is one of those things that is for everybody. It's not just for management tiers. Management tiers should be assessing the risk that's happening in their teams and doing something about it.
But let's say if I'm a senior, if I sit on these SLT and my director is not adhering to this, is my pay and rations affected? Because if it's not, then it's just a piece of paper, right? The question I'm asking, how is this new policy, which is good in paper, how will it be actually embedded in the organisation? I hear about corporate champions, but if someone's doing an appraisal and they know they're going to get measured on whether you are adhering to this, then it gets done. So what could the question, let me rephrase it, what could be done to ensure that senior managers are inculcating this in their everyday work and they're adhering to it? Because, you know, unfortunately, I have the corporate memory to go back a number of years, and this has not been adhered to our risk management framework.
It's interesting. I'm yet to work in an organisation that doesn't work to their risk management framework. And if we've got more work to do in terms of the training and education piece in order to embed it, I think that's really important. I think there is an opportunity when we've got visibility of all risks in the organisation to be able to report to the senior teams and to directorate DMTs about when they were last refreshed, when they were last looked at. There may be a tendency in the organisation potentially not to close them down. People might also be worried about closing down. You can close down a risk, but it's gone. And if it re-emerges months later, you have to bring it back onto the risk register. You don't just leave out of date risks on the risk register either. But I think if there's more work to do here, then we will identify where that needs to happen, and we will embed it. But there will be areas of the business, like I said, by the nature of the job that they do, they're managing risk every day, and they, as part of people's lives.
Okay, good report. Right, okay, I'm going to small supplementary, Councillor. I want to move on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, hold on. You go first. Then.
Thank you.
Can the questions be concise? Please?
Yeah, as concise as they can be. I don't feel you answered my question. So if we were to go back to previous risk registers, I know that you've made some changes, would there be any directorates that stand out as having a sustained high risk profile? And secondly, if you have some time, if you could explain what this bow tie looks like, that is an improvement in some greater detail, actually looking at the chart. Because if you go back to a previous risk register, like it is an improvement, but Arik kind of alluded to this. The previous one did have a section for an action plan, while we have more distinct measurable numbers here that we can see in terms of the risk management register. We don't have any action plan, deliverables, etc., so that we can hold those directorates to account in assessing risk profile.
I asking, could consideration be given for an additional section to be on the risk plan so we can see the actions? Is that what you're asking for?
Sure, but the first one is important.
So in terms of risks across the organisation, Ashwin is assessing that at the moment, so we can report back to you when we have a visibility of all risk across the organisation.
Are you discounting previous risk registers?
No, we're not. They're
okay.
all included. They're all included, and what we're looking for is a consistency in how they're scoring. So not only that they're scoring by the 4x4 matrix, but they're also scoring consistently using the methodology that is there now, that is much more prescriptive, using different criteria. I think there probably was a more simplistic one in place before, but this one actually covers much more in terms of the risk scoring, operations, reputational, people, financial and resources, legal and statutory. So it enables you, it might be really low in one, but actually much higher in another, and then you've got to go with that higher risk.
Agreed. And to address your second point about future mitigating actions and how we track them, in the bottom right-hand corner of the bow tie, that bottom right box, that is for future mitigating actions, and there's RAG status to show if it's on target, at risk, or off target, and that allows us to then intervene to find out how we can be brought back on schedule.
Page 9.
Page 9.
Now, you happy with the answer? Move on.
Fine.
Councillor, for a question to you, poke my interest in terms of managers and their performance measures against risk. And you haven't actually answered, or at least I haven't, so I'm going to come back and take in the consequence of all. Would it be a good idea then, just to make it simpler, that managers' performance appraisal look at how they manage the risk, because we know they're supposed to do it in their day job, but as comes upon cooperative memory, we have seen poor governance and especially in terms of risk, etc., across the years now. So is it in their performance appraisal that you monitor? And if not, will it be a good idea to make certain that it's there?
So I think there are management responsibilities that are more than just risk management that need to all be wrapped up in expecting managers to act in the right way. So it would be one of many management actions that they would have. If they've got contracts, they would need to manage their contracts, as an example. However, I don't know that the performance management mechanism here, I'd have to take it away and speak to Audit in terms of how it works, because I understand we've got a slightly different way of operating. But even if it's not part of that framework, it's an expectation of all managers to manage things such as this.
Can I just, a really good discussion, it's a good report. I think the issues where you see Ashwin and the committee was probing is how can we make this new regime workable and inculcated. Yeah. So I wonder, could you take an action away to look at that piece of work? And perhaps you're doing a piece of work to, perhaps I think in 6 months' time, I'm looking, is that an appropriate time? Just do a written report. You might not have to depend others to decide, but just to provide that assurance that work has been taken away on reflection to look at how senior managers and deputy assistant managers are actually embedding this. You mentioned training and the champions, but actually beyond the training on your day-to-day, how's it actually being embedded?
Well, I think historically there used to be a group risk function, but once that was dissolved, people started, there are risk management processes going on across the organisation, but happening in silos a lot of the time. So I think by having a central risk function, it allows you to bring that all under one roof. And with that comes the monitoring, the tracking, the interventions, making sure that people are doing what they're meant to do.
And then I'm going to put an action that in 6 months to just report back to the committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and always got that. It might depending on what design and implementation. But I think it's just a report back and how it's been implemented. So it's a good report, but I think the issues are assurances required on the implementation and how the senior manager actually lives and breathes it. I think that's what the feedback, and I can adequately some of that from the committee. Happy with that? Yeah, and pressure from council on that. Committee, with regard to the recommendations, the committee is recommended to note and to comment on the risk management report, which we had a good discussion, and the policy for 2027. My show by a show of hands, but the report is noted.
Noted.
Thank you. It's a good report. Well done. Thank you. I won't see you in 6 months, but 6 months. You've done 100 hours. Yeah, I'll watch you at home. Item 6, quarterly counter fraud report. I'd like to put on record. The committee's thanks to Nick and his fraud team for the endeavours and success over the past 4 years. Saving residents money. I thought the joy to look at your report, Nick. Nick, you're going to give an introduction, followed by any questions by the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Nick Sharp, Director of Fraud. This is our quarterly fraud report. Was originally due at the February meeting. Taking the report was read, but I'd just like to highlight some of what Councillor Paul's just said. In relation to properties recovered within the housing sector, this is the 4th consecutive year that we've kind of beaten our sort of last year's target. Last year's properties recovered, the figure there is increased equally to 59 now on the chart, opposed to 55. So we're some way, beating that score. Equally, the number of properties recovered, the number of succession stopped, and the number of right to buy stops are all at their highest within the last 7 years. In terms of since we've been monitoring and reporting on this. So taking the report as read, happy to take any questions on this particular.
I just got one question actually. I got 3. On item 8, we've had 5 cases of the employees dismissed or resigned, dismissed, resigned. What directorates are these? The reason why I'm asking that, does that highlight a wider problem in that directorate? That's the question I'm asking.
So in relation to the reason the director is not mentioned here is obviously just to ensure sort of the personal information not being able to identify anyone. So obviously that's the reason why we've not put directorates in the report. due to any sort of potential HR.
So let me ask the question the other way. If there was a pattern, right, of certain directorates, because I think the figure, I think 8% of fraud is actually covered and the rest we don't find. What assurance can you give that there are sufficient counter fraud measures in those directorates which are high risk?
Okay, so any times where we find there is a particular directorate that might be, in terms of volume wise, I would have conversations with the corporate director. Equally, if there was a particular type of fraud that we were seeing more frequently, and I think that's probably the key kind of area. So where we do find that there could be one particular fraud that the volume might be high, we will work with whichever corporate director or HR in order to ensure that our sort of procedures and policies counteract whatever we've found during the investigations.
The other thing that I would add is when you're looking at the internal audit reports and where we've got high risk recommendations where the internal control environment is weak, that leaves itself susceptible to lots of things, including. So it's important that, through internal audit, when they go into test the internal control environment, that what we want to be hearing as an organisation is that it should, if anything, have been found in the audit, that they're actually implementing those recommendations as quickly as possible to reduce the risk of exposure of that internal control environment being weak.
Okay. I'll be not wanting to alert potential fraudsters to what we've got their eye on them, right? So I'm just seeking assurance that these in item, whether the employee being resigned or dismissed, but there's no pattern and we've got adequate controls. I'm just looking, I don't particularly want to know the actual directorates for obvious reasons. What I particularly want to know that you've got your BDI on them, the control environment is increased, and if there is a pattern, we are on it.
Yeah, I can confirm and give assurance that we are where patterns occur, as I said, through corporate directors, HR, and corporate leadership board. I would raise those matters and they'd be discussed and necessary actions taken where appropriate.
Okay, so the assurance there, and obviously in finding, council tax, miscrimes and right to buy and whatever, are increased checks being made to application processes?
Yeah, we've got lots of new tools. We're always adding different, whatever's available to us. We look to see as to where we can detect more fraud. So we do make use of new and different tools to increase volume and numbers and detections.
And I ask those questions because I do enjoy, it's a highlight of my audit time looking at your report, Nick, and you know that. And I think it's very good, but the team does find all this stuff, and eventually we're taking resources away from the residents and Newham. So I think we should be hard on this sort of thing. I always ask, and my questions were in the spirit of what more can we do to protect, Newham Council's money. I'm not asking the question saying you haven't done the work.
Yeah.
It's important I say that, right? But it just,
We've got lots of as I said, new tools and initiatives, but we often only speak about them when we've got results to bring. As we don't want to kind of alert to everyone what we're doing before we deliver.
And the question of Section 151, have we got sufficient resources in this area to get it? Because there's always an equation, isn't it? Do you put X poundings to stop X fraud? And can you just give us some, having done the accounts, can you give us some high-level steer where you see the strategy is on this area, and are we at the right point? Where do you think it's going?
So the next item on the agenda is the strategy and policy, anti-fraud and corruption strategies and policies. It's much more comprehensive suite of policies this time round that should give the committee. We'll be keen to hear what you've got to say on that, so I won't say any more on that. You'll note that I've put 300,000 into the internal audit team to expand that. If the anti-fraud and corruption team, the counter-fraud team, needs any more resources, then we will assess that as we move. But we're not hindered by the receipts in the teams. If the team need to go and investigate, they will go and investigate. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Sorry, are we staying on this part? Do you have some more questions on this part?
No.
Because I wanted to move on to council tax.
No. Any way you want to take it
Fine.
on this section of the report, you can with it.
Just
Yeah, I've really been after Rick. Yeah, thank you.
just wanted to ask, great that 1.6 million was added due to your work in this area. I just wanted to know how, in terms of like investigation, council tax investigations, how that shapes up into, I guess, the council's wider bill and uncollected council tax. So how much of it is fraudulent, or just in terms of this, sheet that you have here, the seized HMRC, etc. How much of that is what you would deem fraudulent? How much of that is just uncollected council tax? Like, what proportion of this is of that total uncollected council tax?
So this is a result of our team doing work looking at matches, depending on what they are. Depends on how an actual investigation might progress. I don't have wider figures in terms of how that relates to council tax being collected or how those figures compare.
Fine.
But I mean, it's something we can compare. Yeah, I mean, that's the most obvious one in terms of, well, with single person's discount, it would be because there's more than one person registered there. But I don't know if what you're asking is how do those figures look as to the overall council tax that's collected, or was that?
No, it's uncollected. So from your investigations, you find that either people were not paying the right rate of council tax or weren't paying it at all, right? So does that then become council tax uncollected, and what proportion of this is part of that figure?
So what it becomes is council tax that needs to be collected, and then we pursue the resident for that council tax. So if someone has been declaring single persons and through
that's one element.
That's one element. Then their bill will go up, and we will be collecting from them. If someone's saying that the property's empty, but they're actually living in it, then they will be billed for the council tax that is due to that property, for example. So if they're applying exemptions that exist and the exemptions are not applicable to them as part of this work, their bills will be collecting the money from them. So what it does is it enables us to collect council tax that we didn't know in the calculations was collectible.
So from memory, last year we had about 35 million uncollected, of which if we were to apply the matching lens over that 35, I know it's simplistic, but we'd get 661 from that. Because that's the question. There's two levels, right? There is the whole lot of uncollected council tax. Remember we had that big long.
That's owed though, so we know that.
We know that.
What next?
So once you find out, does that go into owed?
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
And so this is
this
part of that
1.6
larger
was
figure.
not in the owed figure or in the figure that was due, but now that figure goes up. So it's either due or it's owed.
It's part of the whole figure.
Fine.
That's a good linkage of last year. Well done there.
Thanks. The work by the broad team, you've done some work in terms of housing recovery, council tax, as my colleagues just mentioned, right to buy, etc. And those are some good pieces of work. However, how does the council show effectiveness and impact of the council broad team in the longer term? Well, apart from the notional savings like 2.5 million, 55 houses to be recovered, etc. But in the longer term, to prevent fraud, how do you measure your effectiveness?
In terms of, obviously, whenever there's any sort of London benchmarking happening with other boroughs, we'd participate in that to kind of see where we are in terms of that. Equally, in terms of sharing best practice amongst colleagues in terms of from other boroughs to see how that kind of compares. The report in itself is obviously a snapshot of some of the work. It doesn't include all of the work we do. The sort of annual report, which would be in the next audit committee, will be a lot fuller. So I would suggest that perhaps would answer the question of what are we doing on a wider scale. This is probably a smaller snapshot of the work.
Okay, good. I'm going to move Arik, then Councillor
The report says that two council officers have been accused of theft. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that was and why they resigned? Was anything recovered? Can you just give us a bit more detail on what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
can we, obviously it's a HR issue, can we deal with that in private session? Because it relates to employees.
Okay, so we'll cover that later, is that right?
No, but the information, I'm not going to have the information in public because it could be prejudicial to various cases. So I'm happy we can do it in a private session at the end of the meeting for about 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. Fine.
Right, but again, I will say this: we need to be very careful with the information we give out outside, which can come back and hurt us. Yeah, no.
No, it was just, sorry, I had a supplementary to the first question. It was just, I don't see from this section, council tax investigations, I see money added onto bills. I don't see how that shapes up into collection. And you're saying that's not in your department,
No.
so you wouldn't know, right? Okay, fine.
Good point. In the it's a good bit of context now. In the report which you are bringing in the month, there was a meeting. I think it was your first meeting where we talked about council tax, and I said it was 50 million actually, not like 35. Could you put a paragraph saying actually unclaimed, for nota bene, unclaimed council tax is X. However, this is a subset. So we don't, because when you're reading it, you think this is the uncollected council tax, when it's not, it's a bigger figure. I'm just very keen that you give them context. However you do it, you draft it in your report. But because I think, we've got a strategy informed by Section 151, we've got a big strategy to collect the uncollected council tax, right? So let's tell residents we're doing it. But also let's tell residents we're cracking down on fraud. I think let's go for 2 bites of the cherry. Yeah. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think you just need to contextualise what this actually relates to. Yeah. But I hear the points being made, and around council tax collection, that will feature in the outturn report.
Great, good point. I'm going to go on to the next. Right, so the recommendation is that the committee ought to note the constant report. May I see by show of hands that the report is noted? Thank you. That's good report. Thank you. Item 7, anti-fraud and corruption. This report presents a new anti-fraud and corruption strategy and anti-fraud and corruption strategy and fraud policy suite 26-27. Members, please note the appendices. There are 6, and I'll read them out for those residents who are watching online. Anti-fraud and corruption, anti-bribery, anti-money laundering, fraud, sanction and prosecution, whistleblowing, and policy for the confiscation regime in the Process of Crime Act 2002. As general feedback, some of these policies will show the approving body as the Audit Committee instead of the Audit and Governance Committee, and I believe that the corporate branding has changed away from the pink swoosh. So, good notes, Pauline. So that this can be considered, please. In addition, members, we have been asked to comment on the policies, but they will be agreed by Cabinet. Are there any comments on the report? Now,
just a quick question. Is this, is there a kind of general, like how often are, policies reworked in this way, or are these specific policies coming to us because, an event has happened or a particular risk has gone down that they need some updating? Can we just have some context as to?
So I think as a matter of good practice, it's important to bring these policies and strategies on an annual basis, even if they're not fundamentally rewritten for whatever reason. And I think that enables us all to keep raising anti-fraud and corruption on our agenda, because what we're saying as a council is we're taking zero tolerance to fraud. And that is an important message for everyone to hear in a public forum. And to have it agreed and to roll out training to members and to all staff, because it's only through education that people can understand that thing that they thought was happening over there, or that looks a little bit odd. We want referrals to be going into Nick and his team. He is the one that will be assessing whether the allegation or the whistleblowing allegation has any is worth following up. He makes those distinctions in his team. So it's important that it doesn't escalate up the management chain, it's important that if someone sees something, they're referring. So this is all about raising awareness, telling everyone what we're working to, and ensuring that we are that we're being as clear as possible.
Sorry, just supplementary. So in what circumstances, for instance, would the confiscation regime within the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002 be used? So has there been any recent event in which that may be used?
It's something that we would use on an ongoing basis. If we have an investigation where we can use the Proceeds of Crime Act to recover funds, then we will, and we have been doing so in all the previous years gone past.
So when someone's accused of a crime,
Yeah.
and they can't prove where they've got their assets from, Proceeds of Crime Act enables assets to be.
And the council would act as an agent for the police in seizing anyone within the borough's assets, or is this about employees?
This is about any crime that's committed
In the organisation?
or with our residents,
With
us. So
Okay.
there's a fraud that's committed against the council.
Against the council.
Against the organisation.
Yeah.
So, sorry, just in fact, let me leave that to the 5 minutes in camera. That's fine.
Okay, Arik?
Thank you. Very simple question. What would you say is the biggest area that the council needs to improve on this, and how is that going to be addressed by these strategies?
I think from a wider organisational point, I think one of the things that we're introducing is mandatory training for all staff. So I think that's the most important new thing that we're going to be doing as part of this strategy that we've not had in the past.
Okay. Joanne?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose there's a follow-up question to that training thing, which I had, which is just how are we going to make sure that it is a success? And there was a couple of wording really where we talk about promoting the document and promoting this policy on page 162. Wonder whether we should be sort of talking a little bit more strongly than promoting it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And just finally, a sort of technical thing, it should be His Majesty's Treasury. You've not updated it, it still says her. So but that's just the point. But yeah, I would be interested in some of the language. So on page 162 we talk about promoting it, and 171 may do something rather than will. I'd just be interested to understand the choice of that terminology.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what points noted on the language, and obviously the her and his change, so we'll look at that. In terms of the training, obviously you mentioned that it's going to be mandatory training, and we're looking at various modules that will cover that. Equally, something that we already do on a departmental basis is obviously offer more in-depth training on certain issues. So if you take, for example, we would go into housing, and we would provide housing training that is relevant for the jobs that those individual officers carry out. So that's a more in-depth sort of training that we'll do, but it's the mandatory training that we are introducing. Equally, I think in terms of promotion, obviously, hopefully when all of these have gone through sort of cabinet, then at that point we can look at some internal comms in order to help get these policies and strategies embedded or promoted, or whatever the choice of language we go with is.
Happy with that, Joan?
Or strengthen it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much.
I've got a question on the anti-fraud and corruption strategy on 156 on employment checks. This organisation for years hasn't been robust enough in proving that the staff who works for it have the legal entitlement to work. Right? So I wondered, you say pre-employment checks, what about employment checks? I think if we employ one member of staff with no right to work in the UK, that's a £20,000 fine. And I remember asking this question a few years ago at the audit board, And I don't think I asked, have we got a system where we can, with 100% assurance, prove that anyone who works for Newham has the right to work for Newham and is of that ID, and that couldn't be provided. And I was given some answer about risk management approaches and all sorts. I wondered, could we use this policy to, strengthen our processes at the moment?
I mean, in terms of the pre-employment checks that we might carry out, they would be related to potential fraud or previous fraud that may have been committed. I think there's probably a crossover piece with Gordon in terms of HR as to the right to work checks. So that's probably a question that would need to be spoken on.
Question for Pauline. Can we ask Gordon what percentage of our staff we have the paperwork for and have the legal right to work in this country? The figure should be 100%. I've asked that figure for a number of years and I haven't been given 100%. So again, I come back and talk about pre-employment checks. What about employment checks? If somebody slips through the net, there are issues of organised crime attacking our organisation. How do we know somebody's not inculcated himself in the organisation and is not the ID they pretend to be? What checks are we doing there?
So I think there are also some DBS checks that are happening for various different roles across the council that may wrap up. Well, the DBS check will tell you they're quite a lot of information, especially enhanced one. However, I think are you asking a question based on the fact that at some point in time there may not be pre-employment checks done, and therefore some people might be working for the council but never went through a check?
Right. We had a case many years ago, people might remember. We had a council employee who came on a fake passport, gave that passport as part of his employment checks, and was found for child trafficking. And when the police were involved, the person had no right to be in the country and was here on a false passport and given the false passport into the organisation, right? And since that time, I've always asked the question, can we prove that everyone in the organisation has the right to work? Have we got the paperwork? And the answer has always been no. So what I'm asking for, especially bearing in mind the things which have happened to us as an organisation, right? Pre-employment checks I get, but maybe we can list out what are the pre-employment checks and whose responsibility is to ask for those checks. The bone of contention is it the manager or is it the HR function? Who owns responsibility? Again, in previous years, it's sort of been a bit woolly between the two. So in terms of pre-employment checks, whose responsibility is to say a member of staff has the right to work rather than the manager palming it off to HR? And on employment checks, how do we check that our current staff have the right to work, are the same ID? Bearing in mind, organised crime is attacking organisations, and the MO of organised crime is to inculcate themselves. How do we know our staff are who they are?
Why don't I take that away and speak to the Director of HR and understand what we currently do and whether we need to enhance it further?
I'll say that in previous years, I've had various degrees of answer, bearing in mind recent issues in our organisation. We need to be even more careful and ask the question from the other side. I'm just raising it not to say there's a weakness, but to making sure it's really robust.
Just a very quick question. I know that it's been said that it's just good practice for these to come to audit annually, but can I just ask if there's been any, what you would term significant updates to the policies that we've been presented that differ year on year that we should know about and explain?
I don't think there is anything significant either as a result of anything that's happened or that's changed.
Okay.
It is just a case of us updating them and providing an enhanced policy suite that perhaps we didn't previously have.
Okay.
What do you mean by enhanced?
More detail. So, for example, we've created the policy suite where perhaps in the past the document was self-contained, didn't maybe go into as much detail on each of the individual areas. So we've broken them down and given them sort of more attention, more explaining than previously had.
Thanks.
I think since 2018, most of the employers had notifications from the Home Office that before you have employ or hire anyone, you do have to take their passport photocopy and forward to them and get it checked by them, not by the employers. And if you don't do that, the £20,000 fine applies. At current moment, how many
do
you think you have?
How do we do it? So are we an agent? So do we put the number into the system to get a name?
No, I think it's not. It's not the liability that falls on the agents. It is the employers.
Okay.
I was saying that isn't something that we undertake within our team, so I can't answer that question. So
We'll take it away and find out, make sure
Thank you.
how we undertake it, whether we've got a document scanner, how the feedback looks.
Lovely, great. Okay. Are there any further questions? Okay. So, recommendation is that the committee comment on the report, which we've done so. I'll move. Do we need to note it? Can I show how? Can we note the report? Thank you very much, members. 7. Do you want to say anything about changes to the policy?
Yes,
This section or the
next one.
The next one, okay. So we're going to item 8, quarterly risk management update.
We've done.
Are you talking about contract waivers?
Sorry.
Hold on. I've got quarterly risk management update,
sorry.
Nick and Maria, number 8. That's you doing to report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this item
Yes.
was deferred from the last meeting, right? And our 15 minutes, I'll take the items as read on each appendices. Appendix A, corporate risk register, risk 101, 1001, decent homes, 1101, health and safety. Are there any questions on Appendix A? Sorry, did you want to introduce your report? How rude of me. Sorry.
Okay, I'm Nicole Mativier, I'm audit manager. As said, this item was deferred from the meeting on 20th of February. So in some respects, it's slightly been overtaken by the item earlier in the agenda. But it does include the current version of the corporate risk register. It also includes directorate risk registers for community wealth building, HRA capital program, and transformation. If you have any questions about any of the specific risks, I can take those away and speak to the risk owners and provide a response. But otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any, is the cabinet having a policy on community wealth building? Is there a new policy being written?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any questions at all on the item, or do you just agree to note it? In silence, okay. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
The recommendation is to note the report, proceed by show of hands. Thank you very much. Item 8. Item 9. Quarterly report of the contract waivers. Which on the supplement?
I don't mind.
Yeah, you did.
So just before we take this item, I just wanted to make the committee aware. I circulated an update regarding our staffing. So within the audit and counter fraud team, as we expand our assurance services across the piece, we're obviously expanding the internal audit plan. It will be growing the one that you see. There's 300,000 or we have as a council, there's 300,000, expanding that to give us a bit more coverage across the organisation, given that we're working in a very different way regarding our internal control environment. We've obviously got quite a lot happening in the counter fraud team. Nick Sharp has expressed interest to do more in the fraud bit. We've had such a long conversation in the fraud about the fraud reports that you've seen before you today, and we welcome that so that we can expand what we're doing further there, and his attention is in that area. So we are really pleased that Nick wants to do that. Obviously, we need to cover our audit and counter fraud team and cover the chief audit executive function. And Alison Chesel, who is here today, is going to be covering that on a temporary basis for us until we move to a more permanent arrangement. The last time you saw an annual internal audit opinion, I think it was delivered by the Southwest Audit Partnership Swap, where the contract was outsourced and it was part of their outsourcing, which is I've worked with that before, but just to let you know, until I've got something in place, we've got Alison that will be heading up the team. And then we can move into, I did say also, in terms of procurement, just to give to the team assurance, and also to give you assurance as members, we've invested 750,000 in the procurement team to create more resourcing that Alison has already brought in on a temporary basis, so that we've got more coverage, given that everything that's happening in the procurement above threshold will require a procurement lead to be doing that on behalf of the business. So just to let you know, we have strengthened it. We're in a different position. Alison can say more, and that's why Alison's able to come for a very short space of time.
Alison, you want to have any comments?
No, just to assure the committee that I am qualified to do the role. I have led internal audit, risk, insurance and fraud teams previously at previous authorities. So, notwithstanding, there is a lot of work in procurement. I've got some excellent interims in at the moment and a restructuring at pace the team and building the team. So happy to cover this situation while in the interim position while I worry about how we can move forward.
Thank you for stepping up, and also it's really on. It's welcome to additional investment in procurement. One of the questions I did ask was, you've trained many members over the past years, and the issue of resources and going to new contracts. That's one of the questions I asked. That's really useful. I think it's useful to put on the record the amount of money which has gone in investment. Often, if we do about the budget, it's good that money goes in to protect resources. So well done. Congratulations. Any questions on that at all? Okay. Any questions on the contract standing orders? Also, they're getting better.
No,
They are. Well done.
magic.
They're not as long or as chunky.
No, they're not as long. As I say, one of them is a DFE matter, which is frustrating for officers and delivery. The date we got the confirmation is not ideal.
Just one question. What has changed? Because obviously, when it first started to come, it was a long, chunky list of work. What's the behaviour change in directorates? We don't see as many contract waivers coming. What's the learning?
I think I'd like to say that some great epiphany. I think probably profile, capacity. I can't take much credit for it, to be completely honest. I think higher profile, slightly better processes, and I think being on the tier 3, I think we're getting a lot more engagement earlier, and that is I guess I should take credit for that. We're getting a lot more engagement earlier in the senior level.
I'm glad you said that at the end. I'm going to take credit for that, because because what we're very good as an organisation of chucking poo at people when it goes wrong, but we're not very good at claiming credit when things go wrong, right? So since you've been here, you've taken it and you've made it much more secure. So I think you should take credit for that, and don't be bashful in going forward because someone will take credit for you. It's normally unlearned. So don't, and it's a serious point. You've got some good work. Take the credit, give the credit to your team, but also it's important we do that. Right? It's important we do that. So well done, you. So the recommendation committee note the report. Nicely by shareholder, but the report is noted. Thank you very much. And well done, Alison. Well done. Okay, we go back to item 5, 24-25 audit results report and annual.
Eric, I have a question.
Sorry, I didn't see you. My apologies.
No worries. It's on the waivers report. I just wondered, I'm aware that there are procurement forums where London boroughs share information. Do we know how Newham compares with other London boroughs in terms of waivers, like in the number of or use of waivers to the CPRs?
Thank you. It's not something we've tested recently because every authority has a different approach, depending on their contract standing order. Some people have under 50,000, it's just noted. Not everyone reports everything to audit committee. Some people have waivers. We report, ours is quite narrow in restrictive in terms of like an extension. One of these was an extension. So the contract allowed for an extension. The service had the budget, the extension, but it's still listed as a waiver, even though mainly because the original delegation report didn't allow. So other authorities will allow extensions, not report them as waivers. It's very, very different. Very different how people report. And some people only report waiver extensions over, say, 100,000, would only go to section 151. So it's not consistent. Everyone has their own arrangements, but as the chair has mentioned, 2 per quarter isn't for the spend we see across our authority. Is I'm quite comfortable with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, Alexa?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so can I ask for a show of hands? We note the report?
Noted.
Thank you very much. Item number 5, audit results. Maria? Anna?
That's not. Thank you, Chair. I'm Andrew Ward, Director of Finance Management. So at the previous Audit and Governance Committee on the 25th of February, we brought a report presenting the draft the draft audit results report and the draft annual audit report. Audit work continued until the 27th of February when we were achieved the sign-off of the accounts by the statutory deadline then. This report, which we're bringing to committee tonight, presents the changes that were made as that work continued to the 27th of February. Those we had in total 7 key recommendations from the audit report. Now 2 low priority recommendations which weren't previously reported to committee, which are contained in the covering report, and then in Appendix 3 and Appendix 4 we've sought to sort of try and present all the changes that were made to those documents for committee's information. We're also joined tonight by my right, Karen, a Senior Manager of the Officers, EY. I leave it there and we'll take your questions.
Any question? I've just got one question. One of the questions about the backstop date next year. We'll move forward from the end of February 2026 to the end of January 27. What assurance can you give this committee that A, you'll be ready for the backstop, and B, committee papers will be issued with at least 5 clear working day notice for the draft and the final version of the account?
Shall I make a start?
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, we would be in a position where the audit statement of accounts is produced by the deadline. I sign it off and it goes to the external auditors, and the external audit begins with all working papers ready, and we're able. It's all smooth sailing throughout the audit, and it's used to be done in a matter of 4 to 6 weeks. Actually, the regulators now are expecting much more, especially in certain areas of the audit, and I know that our external auditors can say that. We have to work really tightly as a team, both the council officers across all departments, not just the finance department, to ensure that the external auditors are furnished with the information that they need in the format that they need, and that we're able to answer queries. And then the same feedback loop from the external auditors to us as to when they receive something, if it's not understood, if it's not clear, if there's follow-up questions on it, that we're getting the follow-up questions in good time. The work will go through various reviews at the external auditor's end. I won't speak on it, I'll let you speak on it, but it's important that when it goes through the final manager and partner review, that's when we know that we've closed off everything at partner review, because even up until then, there may be things that need to change. Providing we finish the audit in good time, there should be no reason why it wouldn't come to the Audit and Governance Committee in good time. The backstop date is the last possible date that it can come, not the aim of the work. It's the last possible date. So our aim is to finish before that and plan for work accordingly. It's not been tested yet as to when the backstop dates. Clearly we didn't hit it last time as an organisation with our external auditors, but there is commitment on both sides to do that work and move to a smooth audit.
Okay. Also, in respect of pages 125 to 126. Appendix A, auditor recommendations. Does the committee agree that it receives a quarterly update against progress made against audit recommendations, and can officers comply with it?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Last question. I'm not sure if it was asked earlier, sorry that I came late. When I was reading the papers, it was said quite a few times that a lot of transactions can't be backed up by evidence. And I was wondering if there's anything we can do about that. And there was also something about the way we display or track our assets and things, that we're not using like the best, most efficient software. So is there anything we can do to ensure that we can back up our transactions, we have evidence for them, and using the most up-to-date software for the assets?
Shall I take that? In terms of the software first for the assets, it won't be in place for 25-26 because we don't have time to implement it and make sure we've got clean data for that. So that is a project for the 26-27 accounts. So that's something we just physically can't do before.
But even then,
but we'd be looking at getting what's on the market and what's sort of best for the organisation. We are going through the data as we speak with what we've got to make sure that's as up to date and accurate as possible. There's a lot of work between finance, colleagues in property and housing that we need to do to make sure that that's all as accurate and up to date as it can be.
And about the transactions, there's lots of
in terms of transactions, that we should be able to do that. We've got more people in finance. We're going to have more scrutiny review to give Maria, as a Section 151, or in a capacity of Section 151, assurance that the accounts are as accurate as they can be, and we can back it all up with evidence. So we're going to do that, and most of the transactions can. It's going through and tracking everything through. So it's not impossible. It's just sometimes we make it more complicated for ourselves.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to Manya's answer, in many cases, those transactions aren't sort of payments or out of the organisation or into the organisation that can't be verified. It's intra-service or intra-departmental journals and movements. And we have had discussions with EY, our auditors, who do consider the number and level of those excessive, and they make those comments that you picked up on about being able to back up what those sort of moving that figure from one cost centre to the other really represents. And yes, we can definitely take measures to improve the position.
We go. Thank you. Go on.
I just wanted to ask, say if we could get the software today, it just seems as though, I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly, but it seems as though everything's so complex and in layman's terms messy that it's not, you can't just easily just translate it into a software. Is that correct?
Yes.
So even though the plan is for 25-26, that's not what you said, right?
26-27. Yeah.
Isn't there something that we can start doing now to get the data ready?
Data cleansing.
Okay.
Yes.
Going to data cleansing.
Yes, absolutely. It's quite a project. It's begun making sure there's sort of garbage in, garbage out, and avoidance of that kind of scenario with the new system. And as we build back audit assurance, which will take a number of years, so getting that properly right and in time for when we plan to get a unqualified audit opinion as opposed to a disclaimed one, that gives us some time to get that right.
I'll go with Alexa, then Joanne.
I'll start off by saying it's no small feat to get the account signed off and to perform the audit. So congratulations to everyone. As a formal external auditor myself, I know the amount of work that goes into it. So well done on both sides. I wanted to ask a question that related to Terry's on audit recommendations. The council is obviously going through a period of significant change, and in my experience, this can sometimes mean that audit recommendations get lost within an endless abyss of change at the organisation. So I suppose Terry's mentioned tracking these recommendations at this committee, which is a good idea, but I also just wonder what sort of SLT are doing to ensure that all the transformational change that's going on in the council also considers the auditor's recommendations.
It's we actually took a report to Corporate Leadership Board this week that looked at the external recommendations. So it's something that we're cognizant of, and we want to ensure that we're implementing. So we want the Corporate Leadership Board to be aware of these things.
Could we have a summary of that to the committee, just for assurance? But we don't need to have the innards of the report, but like the key headline summary from that report.
So these recommendations, that are the external auditor's recommendations, we've got them summarised so that we can track them, because we haven't only got recommendations that are in 24-25's report, we've got recommendations from previous audit reports that we're tracking to ensure that they're all completed. Now, if they're all completed, our external auditors will sign them off, and then there won't be a need for them to reappear in future reports. So it's the summary of what those recommendations are in the table that we've taken.
Is that, how onerous is that? Is that a mega document, or is that quite a concise thing?
It's the external auditor's recommendations are concise. We've got I can't remember how many we've got. We've got 15, 16 of them this time round, and I think we've got about 5 or 6 from previous.
Alexa, would that provide assurance to you if you had like a summary report, or just summarise that report? Which
no, even just, I suppose, Maria, I guess a further question, like in you're obviously on transformation board, etc. With all the changes that you're making with the transformation program, are external auditor recommendations factored in?
Where relevant, yes, but there's a number of external auditor recommendations here that are clearly for the finance team or clearly for the property team, and they need to be implemented. So ensuring that we've got the right departments implementing them. Where they're cross-council ones, absolutely. So obviously we had a financial sustainability recommendation from the external auditors. That was a cross-council. It also featured in our best value notice. So where they affect everybody, they absolutely need to be implemented by everybody, and that awareness needs to still be there. So we want to keep the awareness with the Corporate Leadership Board and be in a position where you're cited on our progress as well. The aim is to implement all the recommendations in a timely fashion so they do not appear in a following year.
That's perfect. That's enough assurance for me. Thank you.
Well done, thank you, Maria. Joanne.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First of all, I just also wanted to put my thank you for sort of identifying in the documents where the changes had happened. I found that really useful from my point of view. So I just wanted a little bit of assurance around the change of wording that was requested around going concern. So it seems like there was an additional sort of couple of sentences added in that. Can you just sort of talk me through the discussions around that, and are we assured that that we're now in the right place with regards to going concern?
Who wants to take that?
Just have a moment.
So I'm hoping to give my view. Shall I give my view?
Page 142 it is. So if that makes any so note 59, going concern. So it was a change from the original going concern note into they added an extra sentence. I suppose I just want your assurance that there was that there was nothing that that's sort of more worrying or weak or sort of an additional weakness underneath.
Yeah, so like I say, menu hold into finance. It was just an additional sentence in terms of looking at the cash flow going forward for another 12 months. So the auditors had assurance that we, as an organisation, were able to continue for another year.
Maria, hold on. Do you want to come in?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Karen Kuna, I'm Senior Manager from EY. So basically on the going concern, when we're reviewing it, I believe the changes that we've requested is on the date or the extent wherein you foresee the council as a going concern, because the requirement is really 12 months from the signing off of our audit report. So initially when we have that, there's the gap between the drafting of the accounts and also on the finalization. So we've requested management to assess based on the 12-month period after the reporting.
Okay.
It's been said, it's just we had to adjust for the date because of when we were signing.
Okay, well, are there any, Andrew?
Sorry, I've caught up on myself. Sorry, Jim. I apologise for that.
Apologies.
Yeah, I mean, the note has been updated. It does reflect the sort of the latest developments in the budget report as well. So yes, it's that sort of cash point that brings things up to date to the point at which we're signing these agreements. Yeah, thank you.
Good question. Any more?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the length of time I didn't answer.
No, sorry.
No, thank you.
Are there any questions on the report? Can we show by show of hand, please note the report? Thank you very much. Great. The year ahead plan here. There is no meeting on April the 15th, our last meeting after many years, thank God. So the new meeting will be decided by the next council at the annual general meeting. And that'll be there. Before we go into exclusion on press and public, yeah, okay.
So you've done the year ahead, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And the date next year, okay.
Joanne, is that a legacy hand or have you got a question? Joanne?
Sorry, no, it's a legacy hand. I'll take it down. Sorry.
Before we move on to the private session, I want to say thank you to Pauline actually, and I want to put it on the record.
I didn't put that in the script.
I know you did. You see, credit's due, right? Pauline, you're the brain behind this committee. You kept me on track and various chairs. So I want to thank you, and you made things, I might look good, well, professional and polished, but actually it's down to Pauline and her script. I think it's very important to say thank you to Pauline, and I want to get it on the record, right? Okay, so I'm going to exclude press and public because we've got some items, and I have two AOBs. I've got Arik wanted something, and you.
They're adjoining AOBs.
Huh?
They're adjoining AOBs.
They're adjoining AOBs. So we're going to exclude the press and public. For those from Newham and wider who are watching, can I thank you for watching our meeting, and can I bid you farewell and good night? I'll let Pauline do the honours to start being recorded.